Welcome to On the Ground with Joe Trippi, the new Lincoln Square podcast, where we talk to people who actually know what's happening on the ground in key battleground elections. Our first two episodes on the ground in Texas with legendary Texas strategist Gilberto Cañas and veteran Texas newspaper reporter Carlos Sanchez are out now, so definitely go and check those out. Today, we're joined by Harvey Kronberg, the owner and editor of Quorum Report, the definitive insider newsletter on all things Texas politics. Like myself, Harvey's an early internet pioneer who had Quorum Report online with a partial paywall as early as 1999, I think. He was named one of the 25 most powerful people in Texas politics by Texas Monthly only a few years later. Despite an early stint as a hippie, Harvey now likes to describe himself as the only practicing capitalist among Texas's Capital Press Corps. So, Harvey, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. It's an interesting time in my little state.
Yeah, obviously. So just give us a little bit of an overview of what you see happening in Texas right now. In the politics of the state, and then we can get into specific races. But I just want to get your take. Obviously, Democrats are always, and I've been one of them, hopeful that this cycle will be the cycle like it was, going back to Beto and others. So maybe you can walk me through that misery.
Well, a friend of mine was saying that he's been drinking the blue Kool-Aid every 2 years now for 20 years, and he's going to give it one more shot. But it is obviously a much better setup. First of all, I'll start by saying after a quarter century of a overwhelming Republican rule, one-party rule started in 1998. Republicans think that ownership of the state is an entitlement. And structurally, they've got a 10-point advantage over the last 8 or 10 elections. We're a plus 10 Republican state. But in 2018, Beto kind of shook the walls down a little bit. There was a combination of his charisma and the fact that the National Democratic Congressional Committee decided to try and unseat 2 Republicans, and they put $15 million into Lizzie Fletcher's race in Houston, Colin Allred's race in Dallas. So the combination of those 3 things, it was Democrats have just been starved for any kind of messaging money historically here in Texas, and they were overwhelmingly successful. Frankly, Beto was a deeply flawed candidate in the sense that the only national issue that impacted people in those days was the Republican promise to end Obamacare. And that meant losing your coverage for pre-existing conditions. And he never ran a single commercial on pre-existing conditions. He lost by 2 percentage points. And I remain convinced that if he had run a single commercial saying, which of the 2 of us do you think cares about your coverage, he would have won. But since then, that's been, once again, Democrats have been in a state of collapse. Tallarico, and don't forget that when Beto ran in 2018, it was a referendum on 2 very unpopular political figures, of course, President Trump and Ted Cruz. So they had the wind at their back, and the O'Rourke campaign been a little bit more about building the party than about himself. I still believe they could have gotten across the finish line. But in that campaign, Democrats gained a surprising 12 seats in the Texas House, taking it close to a tie. They flipped 2 congressional seats and 2 Texas Senate seats. I mean, it was pretty historic down ballot. But they lost ground continuously since then. Here we are in 2026. We were the pioneers in mid-decade congressional redistricting. But even in Texas, President Trump's approval is about 37% now. The number of self-identified independent voters is the fastest growing political entity in the state. Historically, it's been about 12%, and historically they tend to break Republican. But there's no sense of a Republican message right now. In fact, Tallarico has taken them by storm, obviously. The presumption was that had Cornyn won, that 10-point structural advantage that the Republicans enjoy, he would have been able to bring Republicans back home. There's no sense of that with Paxton. That 10-point structural advantage is now down to maybe a 2 or 3 point structural advantage, which is, as we both know, pretty competitive. Actually very competitive. Tallarico is breaking fundraising records around the country. He's actually ahead of where Beto was at this time in his campaign. Had a little fundraiser here in Austin on Sunday night, raised a measly $300,000 in 2 hours. So, and the most significant thing to me, just because I've been watching this game for so long, is he's about party building. He's not about himself. I mean, obviously it's about himself, but he has multiple appearances with down ballot candidates. Well, Gina Hinojosa is the gubernatorial candidate who most of us don't think will be able to raise very much money, but mere proximity and also a Latina name is going to be pretty helpful. So we're about to test that sense of Republican entitlement, and frankly, nobody seriously in the party wanted Paxton to win, but that's the albatross they've got, and then that's bookended. I'll just wrap it up with this. At the bottom of the statewide ticket is a guy named Beau French running for Railroad Commission, who all I have to tell you about him is when he was Tarrant County, that's Fort Worth, Tarrant County Republican Party chair last year, he ran an internet poll. Who is more dangerous to the country, Jews or Muslims? That's the Republican ticket this year.
And so one of the things that I was sort of blown away by is how much money they spent in their Senate primary and runoff between Cornyn and Paxton, and how low, particularly in the runoff, the turnout seemed to be. I mean, it was almost like they spent millions and millions of dollars. You think that usually in a knockdown, drag out fight, you think usually that energizes a lot of people to come out for that fight and, and get their guy across the finish line. And it was, I don't know about you, I was kind of like stunned by how low it was. I mean, it is.
Well, negative advertising. Negative advertising is designed to suppress vote, typically.
Right. Yeah.
Depress vote. So there's a combination of it was Memorial Day weekend, and people had plans, and then I think that the Cornyn folks. I've known John forever, and the things he had to do to humble himself to try and portray himself as no air between he and Trump was really pretty humiliating, and it's very humiliating actually. And I think that any number of Republicans, this is anecdotal, but that I know, that would typically vote in the primary said, well, if he's just going to prostrate himself to Trump, then what's the point? So the combination of just all the negative advertising and a dispirited Republican establishment vote, I think combined to produce that surprisingly low turnout.
So, around the country, we're seeing, more Democratic energy and independents breaking more towards Democrats than Republicans, which is, like you said, usually it's at least a little bit the other way, if not a lot the other way. Are you seeing that? In Alabama, we've been talking about this, that in the Democratic primary there, turnout was 116% over what it was for Democrats in the last time around, and Republican turnout was down 25%, which in their primary, which is again you saw little signs of that with the Cornyn Paxton runoff. Is there an energy difference going on, or is it Tallarico? Is it just he's so different that it's actually lifting up?
It's both of those. It's both. He is a charismatic personality and a unique flavor in Texas politics. And I have to just add one more element to that. Beto O'Rourke never served in the legislature, never served in the political office. He just had natural charisma. Tallarico has been in the legislature multiple sessions. He's been on the tip of the spear in most of the debates. when he gets up on the front or back mic to either advocate or interrogate, people stop to listen because, I mean, he is just so rhetorically gifted. And he's been in the combat zone. I mean, there's no greater combat in Texas politics than the Texas House. So he's an experienced fighter, but with a happy face and a somewhat angelic disposition. And that's pretty unique. But also, there is just massive dismay. The Hispanic vote in Texas is probably going to determine this election. 2024, I don't know about the rest of the country, but here it was an anomaly. Democrats just didn't show up. And those that did, particularly Hispanics, seemed to break for, well, they did break for Trump. I-10 divides the state from El Paso through San Antonio to Houston. South of I-10, you can't plan a construction project because workers are simply afraid to show up, even if they are legal, because the ICE presence south of I-10, there's not a lot of TV cameras, but there's a hell of a lot of ICE presence. And of course, the economy being what it is. Now, having said all of that, Paxton is a known quantity. I mean, Cornyn's done a hell of a job branding him. Didn't work for him, but he has created the Paxton brand. Tallarico is still being introduced. And you've seen, I presume, all some of the squirrely things he said, or the very progressive things he said. God is not binary, and there's 6 genders and all that nonsense. And so when people first hear that, they're taken aback because it seems like such a disconnect. That's obviously his biggest challenge. But the metric that I look at is, or when I'm thinking about his possibilities, he's got to win about 56% of Harris County, which leans blue and is fairly blue, but there's a huge mushy middle that he's going to have to attract. He's got the base nailed down. He's got lean Democrats nailed down. Now he's just got and it feels like that there's an actual organization. There's a sense of party building. And there's a bigger vision than any of the Democrats we've seen in this century. Wow, there's a thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, so has any of the redistricting stuff? Is any of that? I mean, because it just keeps seeing me that the Republicans sort of have banked everything on where Latinos were in 2024 and where independents were in 2024. And regardless of Tallarico or anybody else, that's shifted because of a lot of stuff Trump's, like you said, ICE, the war in Iran, higher gas prices, a lot of that stuff's already, shifted before you get to Paxton and Tallarico in terms of where people are processing things. And then you have the 5 districts. I'd like to get your take on all of that. And, are Republicans going to win all 5 of those districts that they redrew, or how's that?
I'll be a little provocative here, and I'm not usually in the prediction business, but that was a White House map, and it was based on Trump 2024 numbers. And as I said, Democrats simply didn't show. So that those Trump numbers are probably 3 to 6% too high. So they drew those districts with the supposed gain of 5 based on Trump 24 numbers. If you use more realistic numbers, I know they're going to lose 2. They could lose all 5. In fact, they could lose an additional 2 by my calculations.
Well, you're the first person I've ever heard say they could lose all 5, which is pretty amazing because of how they drew the line. I mean, there's some truth there about how they drew the lines. It's trying to get a read on how bad that map writing from Washington and the White House was.
Just looking at the numbers, just the macro level. You take the Trump numbers and you back out, say 4 points. You've got 15 congressional seats held by Republicans, or that should be Republican, that are 60% or less, which means they're 56. The 60 percenters are really 56%. The rule of thumb in Texas is a 56% district is a competitive district. And I'm not really sure it matters who the candidates were, except for that crazy woman in San Antonio that was clearly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel, Maureen Galindo. They don't even, well, I'll just put it this way, that in 2018, in the Texas House races, of those 12 winners, 8 of them were no-name Democrats with no money that just had a D behind their name in a potential sweep election. So, we were talking about Tyler before on air. There's a district that's rooted in Tyler that reaches into the North Dallas suburbs. Those North Dallas suburbs are bluer than you could imagine, and they're motivated. And nobody is looking at that seat, but I say that's one of those. That's a 50% Republican district. So we'll see.
And what about the governor's race? Can we get into that just a little bit? I know that's probably the longest shot there, but I do think she may help lift some votes for Tallarico and some of these House races that were in state House races. But how's Abbott perceived? Vis-a-vis in her campaign.
Well, let me say Abbott has barely mentioned her name, but he's mentioned Tallarico's name a lot. Obviously, Tallarico is the organizing principle, but having a Latina is obviously a plus. The problem, of course, is that 4 of the statewide candidates come from the bluest county in the state, Travis County, which is Austin, the Blueberry in the Red Sea, in the Red Sioux. And we should not underestimate Abbott's organization, his capacity for turning votes out. Dave Carney, his political consultant, is about as good as they come and has proven that over and over again. And so they have the inherent structural advantage. However, having said that, Abbott rarely polls above 50% in terms of approval, and he's not particularly beloved by his party. In fact, he hasn't been inside a state Republican convention since 2016. He won't go in there. He'll have receptions away from the convention where you have to be screened and approved on the guest list. But as you may recall, a couple of cycles ago, after the Uvalde massacre, Cornyn proposed and passed very, very, very modest gun reforms in Congress. He was at least man enough to come into the convention and was booed solidly for 25 of the 30 minutes he spoke. The only time they stopped booing him was when he was talking about Supreme Court appointees. And Abbott faces the same kind of perception. Dan Patrick is the lieutenant governor is the ideological epicenter of the state Republican Party. Abbott is a somewhat aloof and strident sounding executive. So he doesn't carry a lot of personal popularity. But the question is, can Gina Hinojosa build enough name ID and to get across, to even come close? We presume it's just going to be Democratic base vote, but at this stage of the game, that's as amorphous as I've ever seen it. So
yeah, well, you get the Democrats tend to focus more on federal races, House and Senate races. I mean, when we throw them, I'm talking about even the low dollar donors, the people send $10, $15, $25, they're focused on taking back the House and the Senate. And I think a lot of people are asleep on some governors like hers, where, if she had enough money, just enough to get a message out, she might actually, help raise the rest of the ticket. I mean, help, get votes out, but actually might have a shot, particularly against someone like Abbott. That's not, I agree with you. I've looked at the numbers. He barely reaches 50% in most of the stuff I've seen.
The only time that he really polled seriously and consistently above 50% was when he was exporting undocumented folks to Martha's Vineyard. And he broke up to 60%. And it was the halcyon moment, and he's now sunk back to a more routine.
Yeah, that stuff always dissipates. I mean, I've watched that happen with Trump in Alabama. He'll do something, and Republican numbers go up 4 or 5 points, and then it just slowly erodes as people, come off of that, whatever the sugar high is that they've been served up. When you're So I just want to go back to the Paxton Cornyn thing, because it seems to me that split, or the Republican establishment kind of depression, or whatever you want to call it. But I don't know whether we call it a split yet, but definitely there's an energy thing there. what are Paxton's problems? You know, everybody, I think he's kind of like probably the best known person out there. I mean, in terms of people made their minds up about him, whether he's corrupt or not, whatever. But can he tap that court? Can those Cornyn people come out for him, or do you think there's a possibility
there's a pollster here named Chris Perkins, and his operation is Ragnar, and he's considered currently the gold standard of Republican pollsters. I know people will hear this and call me up and complain at me for having said that, but he's a legitimate pollster, I guess is the best I can say. And he ran some tests with focus groups, et cetera, and issued a report that said 25% of the Cornyn voters absolutely won't vote for Paxton. And that, in fact, the whole Republican Party is dispirited, and it's going to be a difficult journey to get them to turn out, just to get your base Republican vote to turn out. So the Paxton brand, remember, they're going to have to defend against, in the court of public opinion in Texas, he's been convicted. Doesn't matter what the rest of it is. They're going to have to defend a congressional map where half of the Republican Congress people are introducing themselves to new voters. And you have an energized, I'll back up one more step. For Democrats to win, they've got a pretty fragile coalition compared to Republicans. Republicans just have to get white middle class and older demographic out, and they're easier group to get out. Democrats have to get young people, they have to get women, they've got to get the gay lesbian community, they've got to get both communities of color. Well, actually three now. The Latinos and the African Americans rarely vote for each other, but they do go in coalition on occasion. And now with the attacks on Sharia law and Muslims, you've got a small but very well organized voting bloc in key areas that nobody is really looking at as a potential upset, say in Harris County and the surrounding, well, particularly Fort Bend, which used to be Tom DeLay country, but is now increasingly purple. So all of that combines to say this is about as good as we've seen it get, except for that post-Obama euphoria in 2008, where actually the Texas House went to a virtual tie, 76 Republicans and 74 Democrats.
Yeah, no, the thing that's clear, at least so far in all the races that we've seen, that Democrats overperforming in terms of energy turnout, et cetera, and Republicans are definitely underperforming. And I don't see any signs that they're, particularly with the Paxton thing, that they're going to be able, that somehow they're going to get that to turn around, particularly as we see, look, we can all get in, talk about the Iran war and all those things, but I don't think any of those things are going to change in terms of gas prices, et cetera, between now and November. So what are the issues? I mean, what is it? Corruption? Is it cost of living? I mean, what do you think's driving or with the Latino community? Is it ICE? I mean, or is it all of it? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
It's a little imperious for me to speak on behalf of the Latino community, but I would say that
your take is what I'm trying to get.
It's a sense of betrayal, frankly, is what it boils down to. This is not what was promised in any respect. Latino I have a retired lady who tends to my garden. She's an American citizen of Mexican descent. She's got a daughter who has a child. The father is a green card carrier. They won't let the child in the car with the father as a green card carrier, because if he got picked up, the child could be picked up and separated. I mean, it's kind of that level of visceral.
Wow.
Now, historically, Latinos are really underperformed their population. One of the reasons Democrats are in the place they are is because Latinos just simply don't turn out. But you've got to presume, or I presume anyway, that there's those that will turn out the polling's pretty clear at 65% anti-Trump, whoever the opponent is. I'm pretty sure James speaks a reasonable Spanish. He has roots in Laredo. Beto never paid attention to South Texas. Tallarico is. South Texas politics are a little bit patriarchal. You have to go down and kiss the ring of the county judge and the sheriff, and that's frequently what'll drive turnout. And Beto never did any of that. And so there's a universe of unharvested potential Democratic votes down there that I think structurally, at least, Tallarico has a shot at. So, and if they can just goose Latino turnout 3 or 4%, and they're 60% Democratic, then the numbers add up for the Democrats this time.
And I'm also a little bit interested in your take on Trump going after the Pope in terms of just another thing where Catholicism, I mean, none of it makes any sense to me. I don't know if it's registering with the community at all, but.
Well, the New York Times ran a story, I guess a couple of days ago. Does Tallarico's brand of Christianity really sell? And I have had true Christian believers who are offended by the way he projects himself. And the Republican message, they're not selling on any issues. They won't be selling on issues. They'll be selling that he's too liberal for Texas and that he's Tallarico is what they're calling it now. And so that's what they do best, frankly. And they know the mechanics of rebranding somebody. And so it's going to boil down to the crook versus Tallarico.
Yeah, the vegan. No, I'm not a vegan.
As the president referred to him, the vegan.
Yeah, right. I mean, it'll be all that stuff. But so far around the country, because when they go back to those, I mean, it's happening everywhere. They'll unleash on Sharia law, trans, whatever, and so far, I haven't seen any of it connect. I'm not saying it won't connect in Texas, but I'm just saying because Trump is so defined. I mean, the party is so gone in the tank with Trump and all this stuff. I just haven't seen those kind of things land, and we'll see. It's early. We know they went after him immediately after Paxton won. I mean, that's one of the only cards they've got, I think. But
an inside baseball kind of line that's going around, shall we say, adult watering holes around town is Republican consultants are really good at running against other Republicans in the primary because historically that's the only election that's mattered in Texas.
Yeah,
they really don't know, with the exception of the Beto campaign, they've never really confronted a strong Democratic operation, at least since Ann Richards and 1990, for God's sakes. So
I was. This dates me. I was with Mad Dog Maddox in that era. So, yeah. So,
that's a whole other program there.
Yeah. So I know. I mean, back then we had real competitive. Mark White, Ann Richards, Mad Dog Maddox.
Newspapers mattered in those days. Social media. My editor Scott Braddock, who pretty much runs the content of the Quorum Report, wrote a column not long ago. He was listening to AM talk radio, which is kind of the town hall for white Republican males, the Republican audience. And he realized that Instagram, which is where Tallarico is most present, is for targeting a different generation. And Republicans' social media, would argue, is not as sophisticated as Democratic social media. And this will be the first election where that could actually play in a way that that does benefit Democrats. But Tallarico is a talented, rhetorically gifted candidate. So with a lot of experience in social media. That's how he became prominent, was a floor debate on whether the seminarian arguing against mandating the 10 Commandments in public schools.
So Harvey, we're coming to the end here. I wanted to give you a chance to tell people where they can find out more, where they can, with the Quorum Report, et cetera, where can they read more or catch up on your take on things as the year progresses, going into November.
The site is quorumreport.com. And I should also mention, not to compete with this podcast, but we also, on Apple and Spotify, you can pick up Quorum Report Radio. Scott Braddock, my editor, comes from a 3-decade-long experience in broadcast, and he's put together a fairly remarkable hour that's free and available, which gives you the narrative, the inside narrative of what's going on in Texas politics. So between our print, pardon me, that's so 20th century, our internet presence and our podcast presence, it's pretty easy to pick up what's going on in Texas. And one other thing I'll say is we have a news clipping service in our site that we give a lot of the content is available for free. And the mission is the 30 stories that the politically active people in Texas have to see every morning. And I would suggest go to quorumreport.com and check the news clips. It'll be eye-opening.
No, I mean, that's the whole reason we do these on the ground shows, is to introduce people to people they should start focusing on, who can tell them what's happening on the ground and where they can learn. You know, if they're interested in Texas, if they're interested in these races or the politics, you know, where they can learn more. I thought, you know, I think people are asleep or have been asleep on Iowa. So we went there first. I think Texas is a place where I will not be surprised. I mean, we could, you know, this could be the year, but I'll be following the Quorum Report and trying to pick up on any insights that, you know, as we get closer, because I think we're going to have the people keep talking about the blue wave. I think it's just a big change wave is coming, where independents and a whole bunch of different groups are coalition is forming that's just for change, not in a partisan way. And I think Tallarico may be really able to tap into that in a way that a lot of Democrats just writ large might not be able to.
We've both been doing this for a long time, and I will say that one of my ground rules is that the most dangerous thing in politics is a sense of entitlement. And Republicans have, after a quarter century, have a sense of entitlement that makes them vulnerable to something new coming along and down the pike. Whether it happens, we'll see. But
thanks, Harvey. Really appreciate you and your time. And thanks everyone for joining us on the Ground with Joe Trippi and Harvey Kronberg in Texas. Thanks all. We'll be back with other shows in the coming days.